Welcome back to the Fear and Beer podcast,
where we discuss all things Halloween Horror Nights, horror movies, and just a little bit of beer.
So kill the lights, grab a cold one, and join us as we dive into this mad world we love.
I'm Nick.
I'm Seamus.
And I'm Jamie.
Like scary movies.
Uh-huh.
Here's Johnny.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
You miss me.
Aren't you drinking?
I never drink. Why?
And as a reminder to all listening, if you want to help us to continue growing as a podcast, don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on whichever streaming platform you use.
To stay up to date with us and all of our episodes, be sure to follow all of our socials. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Fear and Beer Pod.
Feel free to reach out to us. We love to interact with you all.
Well, I wonder what we are going to talk about today.
Why you got me recording on a Friday, man? This is crazy. It's got me all over the place.
The last couple of weeks,
sorry,
pushing stuff around just because these announcements, man. These announcements.
Yeah.
What the fuck are they doing?
It's clearly Universal's fault.
Yeah, they should know. We do our episodes on Wednesday or Thursday, and we release them on Fridays. They should know this by now. What are they doing? But shit,
okay, you got me here recording at 11 o'clock at night on a Friday. It's no big deal.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a late one. This is how much we love you all. But yeah, I mean, we don't have to intro this, right? We know what we're talking about.
What are we talking about?
These originals. So we got 4 more originals. We talked previously about Slaughter Sinema. We talked previously about Goblin's Feast to an extent. But we've had 4 more drop throughout this week. So we're going to touch base on that a little bit. Tonight we're running with just me and Seamus. We're kicking it old school. And this episode is going to come out more close to our 4-year anniversary, which is technically on Sunday, the 26th. That's when we dropped our first ever episode of this crazy little podcast. And it seems a little fitting that we're throwing together a last minute one, very reminiscent to the older years where we just kind of no schedule. We're just kind of going for it. We're going to go through these originals and we got some call-ins we'll get to. But before we dive into anything, I just want to say like what I couldn't say on the mic at trivia, but holy fucking shit. That was insane. I can't believe that many of you guys showed out and showed up for us. It truly blows my mind just how much of a reach that we have. It doesn't seem, we're just 2 guys and a gal that put out a podcast on Halloween Horror Nights. We record, we put it out, we stay up to date with everybody, and you really don't see the effect of it too much from our end. You see numbers on a social media platform and you see likes and follows and all that bullshit that's, for the most part in today's society, just fake nonsense. But when we throw together an event like trivia for our 4-year anniversary and we pack the fucking place to the walls, it's insane. It blows my mind. So thank you so much to everybody that came out. Thank you to all the podcasts, Catacombs of Halloween Horror Nights, Matt Hunter. We had Liz and Ash from RIP Tour. We had Jess and Mike from HHN 365. They came out and they supported us all the way since we started this. We had Ryan from DOA. We had Tyler from Murder on Main. Everybody there had a great time. I really had no idea what to expect. You throw these events together and you hope people show up. And in the back of your mind, at least my mind, I'm like, there's going to be 10 people here. Like we're going to have 10 people. And
it still blows my mind that, we still have somewhat of a reach.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to fathom that I walk into Topgolf in Orlando, and the minute I walk in the doors, I hear Jess's voice from 365, and I'm like, where are they? Like, and then I turn to the left, and we're in the main bar area when you first go in the place, and we've packed it. So, yeah, I mean, what Nick said, I'm not going to reiterate everything, but it was pretty wild, and really is kind of hard to put into words that, you have this kind of reach, even for some small little niche podcast that we get going, that, with the fact that there's like hundreds of thousands of podcasts now and everybody with a microphone has one, the fact that we have actual people that listen to us and people that recognize us and they want to hear our opinion about something, I think is pretty cool. So thank you for coming out. Hopefully we'll be able to do it again and see everybody, for it.
Yeah, it's just so cool. You see so many familiar faces, and then you see people that you haven't seen since, Horror Night season. I'm always shit with names anyways. So like if I forget your names, I am so sorry. I forget my friends' names. Like at times I'm just so fucking garbage with that. But it
I
was
forget
just
my
insane.
family's names.
Yeah.
Let's be fair.
It was just ridiculous. I mean, we put extra tables in the bar area. We split tables up. I created new tables, and we're standing room only. So I don't know where we go from here, but next time I guess we gotta get there. Everybody
space.
a little bit earlier. Maybe we'll try and throw a couple more tables in there. We'll see what happens. But we'll definitely be trying to do something like this again in the future, because it is a super super successful night. And we will try to make some of the questions a little bit easier. It's so tricky. I talked to some people here and there, but it's that tough balance of you want to challenge the HHN aficionados and you want to make sure that people come and still enjoy their time and don't feel like they're just getting beat down with like a Horror Nights SAT. And it's finding that balance that's tricky.
Riptor came in throwing haymakers. That's for damn sure. I'm pretty sure I would have gotten 0 in that round. I had no idea what anything. So that says more about me than them. So just keep that in mind, everybody. Like it shows how little I know about the event's history. But
I don't.
Those
and I
questions
don't
were
absorb
tough.
stuff. I don't absorb stuff, right? Like we will research something and then I forget about it the next week because we talk about a whole different topic. So it's just like it's insane, but we're still finding that balance. So thank you for if you came to the first one and you got beat down and you showed up to the second one. I hope it was a little bit easier for you. I hope you still had fun. I hope it was a good night. Everyone I talked to was just raving about it. So something that we're definitely going to continue down the road because it was absolutely mind blowing. I can't express it enough just how insane that was. And if you couldn't make it and you tuned into the live stream, I'm really glad that actually worked out because I had no idea what I was doing. I just set up the camera, set up the mic, and said go live. So it's just thank you for following along. There was people in the chat answering questions, and I think some of those people would have won. They were firing off the correct stuff. But yeah, enough about that. It was a great night. We'll do it again. Let's get into what we're going to be talking about. But God, it's late. Before we do that, let me crack my beer open. I got this really cool one. I just stopped at Half Barrel on my way home from work, and this is LSD. No, not the drug.
Oh, well, that's not beer, though.
Liquid Spiritual Delight from Second Shift Brewing. It is trippy. It is it's a double imperial stout, which is probably not the best thing to drink late at night before I'm going to work in the morning, but yeah, when in Rome, right? It's 11.5% ABV, 38 IBU, and LSD is a stout that is a chewy, chocolatey, and a joy to behold. Just friggin' drink it, according to the details on Untapped. So let's crack this thing open. Overall, this has about 10.3 thousand scores, and it has a 4.05. But this thing is motor oil. This thing is crazy. And if you can see in the YouTube video, if you're following along with us there, I got the new Horror Night shirt. I couldn't not get this thing. This thing is sweet.
Oh, I was going to say something about it.
I had to. I went to go check out the Tribute store, which they just opened today, but I went for the annual pass holder preview. Super, super cool. It's got like that retro 80s, 90s video rental store, and it's got an arcade, and then at the very end it's more of like a theater aspect. A couple little nods to HHN throughout it. You can find on the movie shelves, you could rent some of the Slaughter Sinema movies. So like, the Amazon Cannibals from Hell, Pumpkin Guts, Cult of the Beast Baby, they're on there. I found a Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, one little VHS.
I see what they did there.
They're teasing us. And there was some other cool stuff. There's a lot of details we can probably go into on another episode about the whole store, because it's really cool. But let's get into what we really want to talk about. And before, let me just get one sip.
This thing is dark.
This is very dark. It is
kind of jealous.
Good little chocolatey smell off the nose.
I need good beer. I keep drinking the same old, but I need to get some good shit again.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a tough one for 11:30 at night. Ooh. All right. Yeah, I mean, it's so dark it looks like Coca-Cola.
So what we've learned is Nick's going to be like probably passed out before we finish recording this episode.
We'll get through 2 houses, and then I'm
So I'll have to pull up my my end of the bargain.
All right, well, let's get into this. Horror Nights just went on a fucking rampage this week, and they were dropping stuff left and right every day, 10:33 a.m. And I'm assuming it's stopping tomorrow. Time will tell, but I imagine this was the bulk of what they were going to be doing for right now. And we'll get into some IPs down the road in a month and a half or a month or so. But the first one that we have not discussed was the announcement of Major Sweets Candy Factory. Now, we're going to read the little experts that they put on Facebook because those seem to have a little bit more detail. Not a crazy amount, but a sentence here and there that might make it a little bit more interesting, I guess. But the tagline or description of this house is: you've been invited to chaperone a field trip to a candy factory, but this sweet tour is about to turn sour. Candy references, like it. When free samples transform the kids into candy-coated killers wielding sharpened candies. Well, this is a beloved scare zone of us. This was a house that we sort of, I guess a lot of the people sort of thought this would make sense for a great house. But we said back in January, this is what we think is coming. It just kind of, I don't know, it felt like it was going to fall into a trend of scare zone turned house. I know it was a little bit of a quicker turnaround than most, but I think that just goes to say how successful this was as a scare zone. This was, I believe, one of our favorites or favorite. I don't remember my rankings exactly from that year, but it was up there.
Well, Graveyard was up there, wasn't it?
Great. It
we
was
both
tough.
liked Graveyard for obviously certain reasons. Like Graveyard had really good characters, but Sweets, again, just another one that kind of knocks it out of the park when it, when they get that particular area at the event. So when you're in New York, you have the most space to play with. So generally, it allows for more props, more larger sets. So that kind of helps. But yeah, I would say that this one was probably one of our favorites. I'm just excited because we get to kind of go into that world a little bit more and really delve more into the story of Major Sweets and how much of a wacky, crazy, psychotic Willy Wonka he is. Like I'm really interested to kind of see where they go with it because I think they really could go anywhere, and we might get like overtures to Halloween 3, especially considering you saw the movie in the tribute store. I mean, that could be a little bit of a, hey, we're gonna kind of hide some things in the candy factory house, or maybe get some Willy Wonka references even thrown in this. Because again, the beautiful thing about these are original, so they can kind of do whatever they want with it. It's not like they're stuck with a particular set of rules. So they can use the characters that they created for the scare zone, but then like add in some touches here and there, from other media or from other sources.
Yeah, I think this is going to have a lot of, maybe not necessarily references, but you're going to be able to see where their inspiration came from. Because this is, I mean, you don't set a corrupt candy maker factory house chaperoning children. You just don't make that without pulling references from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory or Willy Wonka, right. Especially with Wonka, with Shia LaMay coming out this past year. It kind of makes sense that they kind of pull some, maybe not references, but it's in the media, in the pop culture zeitgeist right now. It's still a big movie.
I mean, there'll be like not references, direct references, but like maybe a few, like teehee Easter egg type stuff, like oh I know what that was supposed to be type of thing.
Yeah, and I love that. Yeah, even though they announced like all these originals and they kind of skipped the dump in the late end, and we don't really have much to guess and speculate on now for the next couple months. Thanks a lot. Now we have to come up with stuff for 2 months after knowing the fact. But they didn't give us away like everything in this house. We have some idea, but not 100% of like, what is this? Like there's no reference of Mrs. Treats in here. Is she going to be in this house? I would assume so. but we don't know for sure right now.
Yeah.
I'd say it's a safe bet, but again, it's called Major Sweets Candy Factory, and all you got is his little logo. So I'm very excited to step in the doors. This is going to be, in my head, just like a super like acid trip house, super colorful, ridiculous, like weird, not torture, but like they're gonna really mesh that candy and horror genre, which is really fun. Like they did really cool kills in like, Silent Night, Deadly Night with the big like popsicles, not popsicle stick, but the candy cane kills and stuff like that. I think you're gonna get a lot of really cool, interesting stuff like this. I'd love to see, like some sort of like Willy Wonka, some like Fudge River, or just some sort of like death trap like that. You have, I would assume that like all the weapons are gonna be sharpened candies to some extent. I'd love to see it take a step forward too and have like little candy bombs, or you look at the bubble gum or something like that, like almost like how Killer Clowns, they kind of get you in the big bubble gum.
Oh, true. Yeah,
cocoons.
That's a good point.
Just finding ways other than just being like, oh, it's a sharp lollipop stabby. Stab. Like, there's so many different ways to branch the candies into these weird, bizarre weapons that might be something other than just a knife. I'm just so excited for. Now, I don't think it's going to be anything crazy scary. I think it's going to be a very fun house. I think it's not going to be jokey, but I think it's going to be fun for.
Yeah, I think Killer Clowns is an apt comparison. I have a feeling that it'll be along the lines of what that house is like, where it's not going to be overly scary, but there'll be a few good jump scares mixed in with some laughs and some wacky music and lots of color. And my dogs want to join in.
Surprise!
You can kind of see where that's going. Yeah, I think for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one. Obviously we'll get into hype rankings and all that stuff later on down the road. Typically, if you're kind of just jumping on the Fear and Beer train, typically what we do, which I think we're going to continue doing again this year, is the week leading up to Horror Nights, we put out an episode a day. And the last episode of that podathon is typically our house rankings. So we'll obviously have time from now to then to talk about these houses in depth, but we're definitely going to be saving our like 100% hype list for down the road.
Yeah.
So
because we don't know what the IPs are yet. And
no, yeah,
they're either going to overwhelm us or underwhelm us, but I guess we'll see.
I think that I've learned my lesson. I'm kind of showing my hand a little bit, but I think I've learned my lesson about overhyping IPs in the past, because I always put them like up high, and then I'm like, dude, I had Darkest Deal at like 6 or 7, and that's like 1 or 2. Like that's just, I have to start definitely leaning in towards these. And a fun conversation we can have once we go through these all is the theory or the thought that I have, and I think we share this, is that while all these houses look amazing and really cool and stuff like that, I do think that there is a factor of budget that is playing into the decision-making process as to why these houses.
Yeah.
And we can kind of talk about that once we get through all these 4, because I think it applies to all of them, and it applies to the other 2 that were announced prior to this episode. So if I forget, you remind me that we have to have this conversation, because I will forget about it. But want to, any final thoughts on Major Sweets Candy Factory before we move along?
No, I mean, I wanted to reiterate. I think that we will get Mrs. Treats in here. I think she was she played a major role in the Scare Zone. I can't imagine that they won't have her at some point or in some capacity in this particular house. I actually kind of imagine the last scene being like you're walking through like either their office or like whatever the final last boss fight, we'll call it. I think it's going to include both of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I do kind of still think that I like your idea from a few episodes ago. We were talking about it, and we had talked about potentially like, is it going to be like them vying for control of the company? Like maybe like we might get some sort of like you either get her or him at the end, depending on like what the story is.
Cool. I like that.
So
Yeah.
like she's usurped power and taken over of the company, and now it's going to be going in a different direction, or is it going to be major suites, or it just could be the both of them? But I can't imagine that they wouldn't have her in it in some capacity.
Yeah,
But
I think you have.
Otherwise, that was basically it.
She was a prominent figure in that zone.
Yeah, I think so.
I think
and I kind of hope we get some of like the other characters that were mixed in there too, like the mayor or whatever of the town, like is in there in some way or whatever. But I mean, obviously the biggest draw were all the different trick-or-treaters. So as long as like we kind of get that same type of feel, I don't like scary kids because scary kids scare the hell out of me. So it's going to be a pretty interesting idea, or pretty interesting first couple of run-throughs for me anyways.
That is a fun little switch because they didn't make any mention as to like the date or the time as to when this is taking place.
Right. So, is it Halloween or is it?
So we might not have like trick or treater. I don't know. Like they could be.
Right.
Maybe it's leading up to the it's the mass candy production before Halloween. So they have to really get things going and ramp it up. But who knows? But do you want to go through the next announcement that they put out the day? Yeah. The day after, because this one's.
Let me just pull this over here so that way
I'm
not
interested.
Looking away from the window. Yeah, so we'll go to the next one. This one's actually the Museum Deadly Exhibits. So another one that we pretty, I think, easily guessed off of the spec map that this was going to be some sort of museum house or something along those lines, and it is. What they tell us here is you're going to check out the Rotting Stone. The local folklore museum's infamous new exhibit. So it's a new exhibit we're checking out. And an evil spirit escapes from within, possessing the other displays and decaying everything in its path. So it sounds very much like Night at the Museum in a way, that there are things, either possessing the exhibits or the exhibits themselves are alive. So we're going to get like that feeling somewhat, and I this is probably the one I'm more intrigued for out of the 6, or most intrigued for out of the 6, because I feel like this could be like the Darkest Deal last season, where it's either going to be really good and it's going to blow me away, or it's going to be meh, that was okay, that wasn't great, I wasn't super wowed by it, or it didn't really do anything new or unique, and I wasn't super excited for it. So it could kind of go either way, I think. But as long as they do unique things with each of the exhibits, then I think it will probably work. It really can't just be samey type stuff. Like, remember how when we looked at the spec map, there was a picture of the High of Horus, which is obviously Egyptian. They have already done the Mummy a million times. So it really can't just be a standard Egyptian exhibit. At least I don't think it should be, because it would kind of pull from that somewhat. So as long as they're like unique or different exhibits, I'm definitely down to see what this looks like.
The interesting thing is they make mention of local folklore. So I'm curious if that this isn't what we think of when you think museum. We think of museum as, like you mentioned, like going through the different cultures and stuff like that. You have Egyptian, you have Greek, you have, the American West, you have, paintings, you have Mona Lisa, all that style of museum. Whereas folklore is what kind of pulls me up a little bit, because that's stuff that's like what are like the big folklores, like Red Riding Hood, like Tortoise and the Hare, like almost like scary tales style stories. So I'm curious if that's like, I just don't know which way we're going with it being the museum.
Yeah, I mean, folklore could mean different things. I mean, obviously, like the Yeti is folklore.
Correct.
I mean, folklore could really be anything. It's just usually it's something like it says here, local. So it tends to be local to a particular region. It can be cultural. It can be stories just passed down through a particular group of people, whether that's a tribe or a family or something along those lines. So this really could kind of go anywhere. I have a feeling that it won't have anything to do with cryptids. I don't think that gets that type of folklore, but I mean, I could be wrong. but I think it's more along the lines of, I'm even thinking something like, I don't know what we were talking about, but I think maybe was it the first spec map or maybe last season, we saw something called like the Banshee or whatever. And we were
Oh, that
talking
was a
about how,
couple of
like,
years. Yeah, last
was
year.
it?
Layer of the Banshees was a
Yeah,
previous
maybe that was
air
last
zone.
season. Could be something along those lines, even like maybe something like a Celtic folklore type of situation, because the rotting stone makes me think castle, makes me think the Blarney Stone, like it makes me think something along those lines.
Yeah.
But again, that's just taking the name stone. It could very well be like a gravestone, like the rotting gravestone, the rotting stone. So that's intriguing, like that name. So where do they go with that? How do they use that? How do they develop that into a complete cohesive story?
Yeah.
And make it fit into like a museum setting?
Yeah,
Because it
and
could be
that's-
also one of those things where, like, you know, like we've talked about it before, like those roadside attractions, and you kind of pull off to the side, and it's like, you know, Uncle Buck's, you know,
Chicken Shack.
pet museum or whatever, and it's just some like stupid little thing that some dudes got going on, and then of course horrific things ensue. But it doesn't necessarily have to be like an actual like Louvre type museum.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Which I think that's like sort of been everyone's main consensus is that like it's museum, so like it's these big
Right, like
historical
Smithsonian.
things.
Yeah.
But the description doesn't lead me to believe that.
Right. Neither. It makes me think of like small town museum, like backwater museum type thing. Like we call it a museum, but it's really just like a whole bunch of weird shit.
I mean, every town's got a museum, right? Even the small towns have museums.
Yeah.
It's a matter of what's in them. And the biggest thing that's missing from here is location. We don't know
Right.
where that location is, so we can't decipher what these local folklores are. They could be completely made up. You know, look at a movie like The Village. You know, their folklore is that there's these creatures out in the woods, and if you wear the bad color and you cross into the woods, you get eaten or whatever. Like to them, that's their local folklore. It's a completely nonsensical, made up thing. It has nothing to do with anything in history. But in that setting, that's what it is. So if this museum was there, it would be all about those weird Sonic the Hedgehog monsters that wear jackets or something. But yeah, I'm intrigued. I'm really excited for it. I think the name is a little bland. If I have to nitpick, I think, you know, just calling it the museum deadly. Maybe just calling it the Rotting Stone Deadly Exhibits would have been cool. It might not tell you exactly what's happening, but I think it's just a little bit more oomph on it. It just seems a little bland.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you. Really, all of the names of all these originals aren't anything in particular. Like they're not particularly like eye catching, I guess is the best way to put it. And I don't mean that I don't mean that they're gonna be bad or anything like that. It's just that none of them are like, wow, that sounds really interesting. It's all very straight and to the point. Like obviously Slaughter Sinema, but that's borrowing from another house because it's a sequel. But like you said, museum deadly exhibits. It's okay. It doesn't really. It's not like, you know, Pasek's puppet theater. Like that. I mean, I know that even that is kind of, you know, okay, it makes sense. But like at least there was still something there, like puppet theater. Like where are they going to go with that? This is the museum.
Yeah,
deadly exhibits. Like, all right.
Yeah. And
cool. I'm interested, but like at the same time, they could have come up with something a little bit more, meaty.
We just spent like 10 minutes talking about we don't really know what's in here,
right?
But like the name, the museum, you have an idea. Where someone like look at again bringing up the Darkest Deal from last year, it kind of you have to kind of go through the house to fully understand what that title stands for.
Right.
Whereas this one, you can be like, oh, it's a museum house. I know that. If you're not an HHN aficionado, if you're not listening to podcasts, if you're not doing your research, and you just show up at Halloween Horror Nights and you see a house called The Darkest Deal, you're like, this, I don't know what this is. Not exactly. Yeah. I have an idea, maybe. But if you have no knowledge in the same sense and you go and you see the museum deadly exhibit, you're like, oh, yeah, I get it. Like exhibits in a museum are coming to life or something.
Right. Yeah. No, it makes sense.
But I'm excited for this one. This one sounds interesting. Again, I think the title of the Rotting Stone wasn't included in the Twitter or Instagram post. That's why we're kind of going off of the Facebook ones, because they do tell us a little bit more. And for the first 3 times, I kept saying the Rolling Stones instead of the Rotting Stone. Maybe it's just a Mick Jagger museum. Who knows? Well, it's a musician band, like another music style house. I don't know. But any final thoughts on the museum before we move along to the next one?
Nope.
No,
Not really. I mean, I think we've kind of broken it down. I'm interested to see what they do with it, but other than that, no.
All right. So the announcement that followed that one, of course, I have this one that I'm gonna.
Do you want me to try this one? So you can just do the next one.
I'm gonna suffer through.
Right.
I picked going first, so this.
He does this every year, guys.
This is the way that the dice rolled today. All right, haunted house announcement: Monstruos, the monsters of Latin America. Jesus Christ,
Cuidado.
Yeah, that one. With La Morta as your guide, you'll be asking for piedad from these 3 terrifying monsters.
Oh my goodness.
The blood-sucking Talapucci, Talahulapucci, owl-faced witch La Lechuza, and bone-ripping El Silbón. I feel like I nailed that last one. Kudos for me. Way to go.
I can't wait till one of our Spanish speaking listeners is like, you got it all wrong.
Yeah, no, I definitely did. Somebody on Twitter said they were going to call in and tell me the pronunciations of these. So
well, good. I hope so.
I'm hoping
because we can use it, because clearly we don't, we struggle.
Yeah.
We struggle with regular old English.
But this one, again, we sort of had ideas about coming to it. This isn't a 100% brand new thing. This one obviously is coming from Hollywood's Halloween Horror Nights from last year. I believe this one House of the Year. So it's a big
Oh wow. So that's a big deal. It's a big deal.
It's a good one. We gave them they used Scarecrow a year or two ago, and it seems like we're taking some from them at this point, which is really cool because I think had it not been as successful as it was on the West Coast, I don't think it would have made its way over here. We had, I think 2 or 3 years ago, the rumor that the Curse of Pandora's Box was something that was going to be coming over here as well, which, I mean, not to throw that out there and switch back, but Pandora's Box, that could be something in the museum. That could be sort of a Pandora's Box house. They
also probably they probably hang on to ideas from Hollywood too and say, this is a possibility for Orlando in a year or two. So maybe we could be something we might still see next year or the year after.
Yeah. So I think I watched a walkthrough previously from Hollywood of this, and I don't remember it 100%, and I don't know if I want to go back and watch it again or if I want to just kind of wait and have the suspense built up for me. So I don't know exactly what I'm doing, because my idea is I'm sure that they're shipping over stuff from this house. I don't think we're building it from scratch. So, and that will tie into what we're going to talk about in a moment once we wrap up these houses. But I don't know if I necessarily want to watch the walkthrough. I know it's not going to be beat for beat what that house was, but similar in context. I'd imagine we'd spruce it up, put our own twist on it, whatever. But I don't want to completely spoil it. But I have seen the pictures of these 3 creatures, and they look terrifying. The little bird thing, the owl, looks amazing.
Yeah. This house definitely has potential house of the year written on it, not just because it won it last year, but also because it sounds like it's going to have the most unique monsters than the others do. And again, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but this one definitely seems like it's on the road to being the most unique and the most unique scare actors and the most unique story. And generally, houses like that, the scare cast tends to go pretty hard. So I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, for sure.
I'm very curious. I'd have to look back into all of these houses of the past, but I'm curious if a house has won on both coasts.
Oh, that's a good point. I don't know.
So it looks like American Werewolf in London won House of the Year at Orlando in 2013, and then it won in Hollywood in 2014.
Okay, so it's been done before.
There's been so it wouldn't be the first, but there might be some other ones in there as well. I'm just quickly kind of glancing back and forth, but either way, that's a huge feat. That's a huge accomplishment to be able to kill both coasts. So I'm excited for this one. It's again, I keep mentioning this. We'll talk about it in a little bit, but it's giving, obviously with Latin America, you have some of those chupacabra vibes. You get a couple little vibes from The Exorcist, that believer house, and that intro is sort of based in like Mexico or something like that, if I remember correctly. I didn't watch the movie because the movie was hot garbage, but I remember some of the intro being that cool little like villagey style setting.
Yeah.
So I'm excited. This is this is, I think, the first time we're borrowing a concept from Hollywood. So it'll be really cool to see what that translates 100% into. If we nail it, we draw, I'm very curious to see what that ends up shaping up to be. But this is, again, we don't cover Hollywood as much, so we don't necessarily talk about all their stuff because we're not going to get out there. So for me, it's almost like a little bit of a tease. So I don't want to dive too much into that stuff. But any final thoughts on Monstruos?
Nope. Just again, another one that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah,
but don't really have any. It's. I don't want to watch the videos. Like, I'm trying to stay away from watching anything that was out in California. I know that they're probably going to change it up a little bit, but I don't want to ruin anything for myself. So I'm going to wait and go into it somewhat blind.
Yeah, experience it the way it's meant to be experienced. All right, well, why don't you tackle the last announcement, which came out today, because this one is interesting.
Yeah, this one's definitely going to, I think, potentially, or have the potential to be the most divisive house this season. I think it's either going to be that you're going to have people that love it and you're going to have people that do not like it, for various reasons, I think. But it is, or they called it Triplets of Terror. And the image shows 3 different characters all looking lovingly psychotic. What it says is, you're invited to the Barmy triplets birthday bash, but beware, they celebrate by recreating their family's murders. Prepare for a gory gathering. So from my, or at least my opinion is that description does not do this house announcement a whole lot. I think it's almost doing it a disservice. It does not sound like it's going to be anything that's different or unique, and it seems like this may just be kind of like a hell block where they're just throwing things at the wall and going to see what sticks. This is not me saying this is going to be a bad house. I do not know. It's definitely more up my alley because it seems like it's more of a traditional horror movie, like a traditional 80s, 90s slasher. But much like 80s and 90s slashers, it could very much be a bunch of hot garbage, or it could be one of the best slashers ever made. So there's a lot that could go right and a lot that could go wrong. I worry that it's giving off too much of a House of a Thousand Corpses vibe, or too much of a Strangers vibe. But with like the three main baddies, 3 masks, and it just kind of being their own slasher story. So I hope that there's going to be more under, like, it's going to be more like an onion, like you're going to peel back a whole bunch of different layers to this. Like, it's not going to be just super surface level, but judging by the description that I just read, I don't know if it will be anything more than what it sounds like. So I don't know how you're feeling about it. I know that you're definitely more of like the campy 80s slasher guy, but I don't know. How are you feeling? Were you like pumped to see this, or were you like, eh?
It took me a little bit, and I think it grew on me. I think the first part that really stuck out to me was, I really don't like being super negative, but this artwork for these 3 people is not good.
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
It's very,
and no, I mean, again, I feel bad for who made it, but
yeah,
it
looks
rough.
like watercolor, but it just doesn't look finished. It looked rushed. It's, the other designs are mostly fonts. You have the Major Suites little character, but Goblin's Feast was just a cool like little design. Slaughter Sinema is just a font. Major Suites is a font. The Museum's a font. Monstruos is a font. And then Triplets of Terror, you have these character designs that maybe they weren't 100% ready to announce this stuff yet, and they had to just throw together some early sketch work. Maybe that's the aesthetic they're looking for. But
I mean, to be honest, the artwork itself is good.
Yeah.
I mean, at least we're getting something more than just a block of text.
Yes.
But it just doesn't do enough for me to be like, ooh, this looks good. But it just looks like it was rushed. And I think you're right. I think that maybe this is the house that potentially had to make up for something that was supposed to be here, and it's no longer going to be here.
Mm-hmm.
I know we've talked about that. There's a chance that something did pull out, and this is probably what replaced it. But
yeah, and they made note of it online. I did see on Twitter that this is a slasher. So like I do like that.
Right.
We didn't have, or well, we don't know this yet, but we seemingly are not going to have an IP slasher involved this year. So this sort of takes that. So I'm excited to see their original take on it, because as much as I love the Michaels, the Leatherface, well, not really Leatherface, I don't really care that much about, but Michael, Jason, Freddy, and then Leatherface, that slasher classic, it is fun to see something different, because as much as I love revisiting Camp Crystal Lake, it's still Camp Crystal Lake. You know, like we can get that at any time.
Yeah.
It's always the same. It's whatever. It's fun. For people that haven't seen that stuff yet, I know they want to see it. I've only seen it once briefly, Freddy vs. Jason, but I'm excited to see where they go with this. I think it's a fun play on the year 33, being that it's triplets. Mm-hmm. So that's a fun little thing, a little nod to the year. I like that they're unique characters. I was kind of torn between what is this going to be. When we kind of heard rumors, I heard stuff of it being like a triplet house, and I didn't really put much merit into it, because I was like, is it children? Is it triplets like this? Is it 3 icons? It's such a vague term. And I never even thought to be like, oh, it's a birthday party, a murder birthday party. But I don't know. I'm excited. It looks very, slasher, but it's giving me a lot of Rob Zombie vibes, that like dirty, that dirty horror, which I call
hillbilly horror.
Yeah, the hillbilly horror.
That's what they kind of refer to it as.
So I'm curious too to ask you, because I asked the people on Twitter Twitter and Instagram, and I think this would be a good time to kind of go over this. What do you think, if you had to name them, what are their names? What are you getting from these?
Oh, their names?
Yeah. So like, let's start with the bottom left, that weird little like gray-haired skull person. What do you think? What would you name that person?
So, I mean, I'm getting the vibe that it's two females and a male, but then again, I guess I could.
That's
be
how
wrong.
I went. That's how I went.
But I would probably.
And then I'll give you what people wrote to us after. I'll hear yours. I'll give you mine one at a time, and then we'll go through everybody else's.
Katie Lynn.
Okay.
Yeah. She's
called
definitely she's a 2 female first name type of gal. I feel like that. Katie Lynn, Casey Lynn, Jamie Lynn.
Jamie Lynn Spears.
Yeah, Janie Duke, something like that.
I called that one Vivian.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. So what about the little rabbit-faced gal? What do you think that is?
Bertha.
Okay. I called that one Maggie.
Yeah, I guess maybe it looks more like a Maggie.
And then, well, I mean, it's got a rabbit face, so I'm not gonna be offended if you don't say it. It looks like. And then that big old fucker on the right. What's that? Beef.
Big Phil.
Thing? Big Phil. You had that one fucking ready. That came right off the hip. I called him Huxtable. So let's get into some people that responded to us.
That's funny.
And I believe maybe they went from left to right. I don't know. I'm just going to read them off. But one person said Chance, Jack, and Eddie.
Okay.
I don't know, but great value, 3 from hell. Yep, I can see that. That's like a win. This one's good. Buford, Cletus, and John Boy.
Yeah, but one isn't. What?
I don't. It's tough to tell. I can't tell what that one on the left. I can't
really.
The one
on the left is definitely a girl, but
yeah,
whatever. I guess it doesn't make a difference.
Boris, Horace, and Susie May. Cletus Clamrot is the big one. This person put Bunny, Bart, Gertrude. Another person put Fanny, Cletus, Bobby. And then one other person put Ma, Sha, and Pa.
That's not a bad one either.
Which could be.
But they're triplets, so they wouldn't be like mom and dad or mom and pop.
Yeah. But I don't know. I tweeted at the Horror Nights account asking for confirmation. I need to see what these things' names are. And I'm sure they have them. I'm sure they're not announced yet. Or maybe they just won't ever really announce it until we go on to the Unmasking the Horror tour.
Maybe they don't have names either. Maybe they just go as the Barmy triplets.
Yeah, which absolutely could be. But no, I'm interested. It's as far as all the other announcements, this one gave us the most, right? We know
This is true.
characters.
Yeah.
Other than Los Monstruos, and Major Suites, we don't necessarily know 100% what are in those things. So, yeah, I'm interested. I like the aspect of it being a birthday bash, and they recreate their murders. So it's a fun little twist on stuff. I'm excited about this house. So I'm curious to see where it goes. But any final thoughts on the Triplets of Terror before we get into my kind of theory on this year overall so far?
I'm holding out hope that this house is going to be good. Although I do get a little bit of a Hellblock vibe with this one.
See, and a lot of people said that, and I didn't necessarily pick up that vibe because it's 3 characters. It's not like a...
I think for me, it's more, I just worry that they're going to just reuse a whole bunch of old props like they did in Hellblock and kind of stick just random characters in different spaces. And now I could be wrong. Obviously, This is like these 3 are the main
Twin
bad guys, main
whatever.
characters of this house. But I don't know. I feel like there's just not going to be a whole lot to the story if it's literally just them
recreating murder,
like killing people.
Yeah.
And again, that can work. I'm not saying it can't work, but I've said it before. I'm definitely a story guy, and if I can't pick up what the story is going through the house, I don't really always tend to lean towards those houses. So, again, I'm not going to poo-poo it until I see it up close. So,
yeah. So my theory now, after getting these first 6 original houses, we talked about it quickly, I think, before these other houses were announced, but it was kind of that mindset of, I think this is a lower budget year. I think that
100%.
A lot,
I think a lot of us shared the same opinion.
I think all of these houses are going to be repurposing stuff we've seen. Now, it might be in a way that we don't necessarily pick up that it's very repurposed. And they do this stuff all the time, right? They have props that they just recycle, whether it's just trees or atmospheric stuff, little stuff. But when I look at stuff like Slaughter Sinema, it's a compilation house of completely original concepts that they could be anything. We don't know any of them. Well, we know one of the movies, but we don't know anything other than that. And they could very well make a movie based off of a previous style house, change the name, give it a really absurd B-grade name, and recycle the props. We could see stuff like Invasion or, some of the Mardi Gras stuff. Like if it's in the warehouse and they have access to it, they could easily do it. Goblin's Feast, we talked about it. Very, very Conjure the Dark, very Dueling Dragons. We could see a lot of that stuff being repurposed. Major Suites. I mean, we have the costumes already, and a lot of the weapons, it's repurposed. Walls can go up to be a factory. That's like a nothing cost. You talked about Killer Clowns. We could see some of those pieces repurposed into this to make it look like that factory style aesthetic.
Yeah.
The museum deadly exhibits. If it's that folklore stuff that dips into that Red Riding Hood, Tooth Fairy, whatever, they have the Scary Tales stuff. They have the Tooth Fairy stuff they could pull from that. If it is cryptids, they have Bigfoot, they have Chupacabra, they can pull stuff from there. Monstruos is getting shipped over, so that's like a super saver. And like you were saying, Triplets of Terror, it's very Hellbelly, it's very House with 1,000 Corpsey, which they've done. Very Texas Chainsaw, they've done multiple times. So you take stuff from those places, smash them in there. You can even take stuff from Welcome to Scary Horror in the Heartland, and put it in there. So while it doesn't necessarily make me nervous, it's just an interesting thought as to maybe why some of these concepts are the way they are. But I'm sure you buy in on that. I think it's a pretty
Well, I mean,
logical thing.
it's hard not to be skeptical just because they are planning on opening a brand new theme park next summer. So they have to reserve a lot of their resources to completing that. And like, where are they going to pull from? Well, they're going to pull from their events, and one of their biggest events of the year is Horror Nights. So it's only, it's only fitting that they pull some of those resources from that particular event. And it probably just means that, hey, we can't necessarily have an open checkbook for each of these houses like we do normally.
Yeah.
Next year, the year after, depending on how well the opening of Epic Universe goes, then obviously things will change and they'll go back to the way they were. And I think that for the most part, it's just going to be a lot of shared props. You're going to see a lot of the same props that have been used in the past. So like for the Triplets one, I'm sure we're going to have like a pig pen, like something to do with
Style
the pigs.
thing, yep.
And, you're going to see some of the stuff you saw in Texas and some of the stuff you saw in House of a Thousand Corpses. And you'll see kind of how they combine some of those houses together a little bit to make these new experiences. They'll still come up with really good stories. And I think we're still going to get 4 really solid IPs. But you should go into this season a little tempered when it comes to your expectations, because you're probably not going to get 6 wholly unique brand new things with brand new props and brand new setups and brand new ideas. They're going to be borrowing heavily from previous years. And obviously one of these houses was a house last year. So it's, it'll be kind of like that. I don't think it'll like change or affect the numbers when it comes to like how many people are coming or anything like that. So if you're thinking that, maybe the year will be kind of slow compared to other years, I would highly doubt that. So don't go in there thinking that. But I do think that this year you are going to see what we've seen trending in the last couple of seasons, where I think a lot of the originals are going to have really low waits. I don't think they're going to have a ton of you're not going to have hour-long waits for some of these or most of these 6. There'll be 1 or 2 IPs that will have an hour and a half, 2-hour wait, and everything else will be pretty low. And I'm sure we'll do an episode, doing our guesses of what we think the average wait will be. But I do think that it'll be one of those deals where you're going to be able to walk on to something like Monstruos, at 11 o'clock at night, midnight, like you were able to in the past. So I don't know. We'll see. I don't think it'll hurt it too much. I think it'll be definitely noticeable. I don't think it'll be like enough to like change our opinions of anything, but you'll definitely notice that it will feel, some of the stuff will feel a little reused or a little, you'll recognize things maybe more so than you have in the past.
100%. I don't think, like you said, I'm 100% on board with everything you said. I don't think it's going to affect the attendance, maybe wait times or whatever. I mean, I can't see Triplets of Terror being a hour-long wait. I just can't. It's right. It just doesn't seem like it is, but I could be wrong. Well, like you said, we'll dive into that in an episode much later down the road in summertime once we do our lead up to HHN for our podathon. But it's just it's something that I would expect definitely this year and possibly next year as well, where we're getting new concepts, but what they're kind of doing. You're kind of onto them a little bit. So
right, yeah,
and that's not necessarily a bad thing. So I'm fine with that. But that's kind of it for all of the announcements that we got through. Next time we're back, we'll have Jamie with us, and we'll kind of run through all 6 of them again, and we'll probably get a little bit more in depth. We'll research everything a little bit more and kind of have a little bit more in detail what we're actually dealing with. But let's get into some of our call-ins. I posted because I wanted to hear what people's thoughts are about these. I don't know. I read through Twitter and Instagram as much as I can while I'm fucking around at work or whatever. But no, I never do that at work. But I just like hearing what people's thoughts are on these things. So let's get into some call-ins. We got a decent amount today, so it's let's see what we got going. So I'm going to try and cue this all up and make sure that I'm doing it correctly, because it always seems to give us trouble.
Hey, how's it going? I just listened to the Goblins announcement yesterday. I gotta say, I'm probably one of the only people who are actually buying a ticket because of Goblins. And let me tell you a little bit why. I've noticed in the past that all the more primitive houses, like the lower tech houses, not said in modern times or anything like punchy, as you guys put it, are the more aesthetic houses. Think about Dead Man's Wharf, think about Blood Moon, and way back, think about Roanoke. And I really think that's going to be a powerhouse of an aesthetic ambient house. Just let me know what you think. And by the way, Major Sweet just dropped, and can't wait to hear you guys talk about that. Bye.
Oh yeah, thanks for calling in. I mean, you're not wrong, right? Those like older primitive style ones definitely lean towards that aesthetic look. And looking at this list of these 6, I mean, I kind of think you're right. I think Goblin's Feast and maybe the museum have the ability to be that pretty house, so to speak. Like Major Sweets is going to be that funky one. Triplets of Terror seems to be dirty. Slaughter Sinema is going to be all over the place, so there's not going to be one set in stone like aesthetic. And Monstruos, while it could be beautiful, it's going to be that like dark,
Monstros
scary.
will be, it'll be all about the scare actors. It'll be about the costuming. It'll be about the various monsters. I think that's where the focal point will be. I think he's exactly right. I think Goblins is one of those where we're going to be able to play with the setting a little bit and give you a lush type of setting. And I don't think that for most, I think that's going to be enough. Again, I stated before, for me, it's just nothing fantasy wise really excites me. So that's part of the reason why I'm not super hyped about it. But I agree with him. I think that I think some of these stripped down houses tend to be more, I'm trying to think the right word.
They're not pigeonholed by anything.
Correct. And I think that like look at Dragons last year, where for the most part it was a pretty lush, technically sound house that took a very over the top idea and kind of narrowed it and made it work for those that were looking for looking for that type of thing. So yeah, I guess we'll see what happens. I still think that Goblins is going to kind of be that comic relief house. I think you're going to get like the goofy, almost, I guess, kind of like Yeti was last year, where like Yeti had a lot of those campy set pieces. I think with this one, it'll be kind of the same thing. I think it's not going to be super like taken too seriously. I mean, it'll be gory, but I don't think it will be like
it's going to be ridiculous, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be like Sam Raimi Goblins, not like, I don't know, like Ari Aster Goblins, I guess that's my point.
Yeah. No, I'm kind of on board with that too. And I think aesthetically it'll be a really cool house. They have probably out of these 3, it's up there. I mean, I'd say Slaughter Sinema, Major Sweets has the ability to really, and put us into that world, whereas Goblin's Feast can kind of create the world.
I think they'll be able to like they're really good at giving us unique scare actors and giving us unique creatures. Like they'll be able to do different types of goblins. You're gonna have this sort of goblin and that sort of goblin, and then it'll kind of fit as long as they kind of break up the setting and make sure it's not too one and the same.
Yeah,
like kind of give us kind of like Blood Moon with goblins, and it might work perfectly.
Yeah, it could, and it could be that style. Maybe we're just entering a town of goblins, and it's not just a weird little one bar or something like that. I think they could pull stuff from Blood Moon again. Going back to what we were talking about, the whole sharing aspect. Some beautiful set work in there, right? Tell me you can't repurpose a couple of the shacks or those building facades or something like that.
I'm sure they will.
Throw some paint on it, smash a window, call it a day. All right, let's get to our next one.
Hey guys, it's Matt in Cleveland. 3 things. 1, congratulations on the 4 years. 2, what do you guys think is going to happen with Scare Zones with the summer parade? Do you think it will be like the Walking Dead year where Arizona suffered? And 3, one thing about that Goblin house, between me and my buddies, it's just turned into a bunch of jokes about Goblin these nuts. So that's one positive that comes out of it. All right, have fun. Bye, guys.
You and your friends' immature humor
I can already see
is
the
not
t-shirts.
lost on us. It's not
Cannot
lost
wait
on us,
to
my
see
friend.
the t-shirts. There's going to be so many t-shirts.
Thanks for calling in, Matt. Yeah, so that's a great point. We haven't even talked about scare zones at all yet. And with the new summer parade coming, that does lead to possible intrusion of scare zone sets. Like those sets that stay out during the daytime might not be able to stay there. So,
right.
I mean, I think we'll be able to discuss it better once we kind of get an idea of what the scare zones are. And thankfully with those, you know, some of the sets pieces get put out earlier in the year. Maybe that won't happen because of the parade now. But I mean, I have faith that a lot of them can be either built up to be wheeled out, almost like a parade in itself.
Yeah, it might. I mean, they've gotten kind of.
It'll take a while to flip it, but it can be done.
They've gotten used to like making a lot of their scare zone props, wheeled props, vehicles, things that they can move in and out pretty easily. And I'm pretty sure they have like some sort of front loader type thing with like slats, almost like a oh my god, forklift, and they can kind of drive in, move the things. If there's anything big in the middle of the street, they can move it off to the side or off the lot or off the front of house pretty easily. And they do a pretty good job, I think, of flipping the sets between daytime operations and overnight operations. So I think they're used to it at this point. So I don't know if it'll affect it too much. But I could potentially see like them having to kind of go easy on on the scare zones this year.
Especially since it's a new thing, you know, like they're gonna have to really adapt to it quickly,
right? And the whole if we're worried about the houses kind of being repurposed because of the new theme park, I would imagine that they can't go too hard on the scare zones either. Like they can't go build in massive props. So I guess we'll see what happens. I do kind of hope that like in San Francisco they do bring back something like we had with that was the one 2 years ago with
the Rob Zombie.
No, with the lady.
Crypt TV. Conjure the Dark.
Conjure the Dark. If you do something like that, where it's a little bit more of a, stage set in the back, it kind of draws your attention. So we'll see. I don't think that we have to worry too much about them being super stripped down to the point where like there's not a whole lot going on. I still think they'll find a good way of making it work.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure what the parade routes are there technically. I mean, it goes through.
But most of them are on the outskirts, so they come out.
It'd be like Hollywood and New York and Main Street. Like so, those three. But San Fran wouldn't get affected, and neither would Central Park. Really, those don't typically have big sets, anyways, though, because of just how narrow they are by itself.
Right. I mean, I think Central Park will still be Central Park, and you're still going to have the same issues you do with that one every year anyways because of how tight it is.
Too much fog and too many people.
Right, but there won't be any issues with the parade route. It's really just going to affect Hollywood Boulevard and New York, I think, for the most part.
Yeah. All right, let's get into this next one.
Hi, this is Jake. Now imagine all 6 original houses get put in a Hell in the Cell, WWE style, 1990s, early 2000s. Now, which one's the best? Out of the characters we know about from all 6 originals, who do you think is going to be living at the end of that Hell in the Cell match? Not which house is going to be the best. Who comes out alive from Hell in the Cell? Thanks.
Damn, that's a good one, Jake.
That is a good question.
It's the it's the Armageddon Hell in the Cell match from what, like 2099 when it was
I think it was 2000. Yeah.
Kurt Angle, Stone Cold, The Rock, Triple H, Undertaker.
Rikishi got choke slammed off the top of the cage into the back of that truck.
I did it for the people. I did it for shut your mouth, you thong wearing fatty. Oh yeah, I got those off the cuff. All right, so this is a really interesting concept. I feel like we got to have just singles. So Triplets of Terror, you're putting the big boy in there.
So you're saying pick the biggest, baddest.
Just for the houses. So I think he would represent triplets because I think it would be a one person.
Because my thought was like, don't count out Sweets because he's got like a whole bunch of fucking crazy children, and one child is one thing, but 60 it might be a little bit harder.
Let's do one. So
just pick one person. All right.
Slaughter Sinema, the only person we know is that rocker
guy,
skeleton guy. Okay, kind of your Darby Allin type.
Yeah.
Goblins. I mean, I'd imagine that there's an ogre in there, big beefy Brock Lesnar style, Batista style guy. Major Sweets. I mean, he's got the big body. I don't know how much strength he's got.
No, he'd be like Vader.
Yeah. So, Vader, perfect comparison. Man, the museum. I don't know who would come out of the museum. So
Goldust.
Yeah. Okay. So
I'm just gonna put Goldust. I don't know why. I'm just gonna say
counting the museum out already. Monstruos. You got that weird bird character.
Yeah. Again, I don't know how far back we're going, but George Gonzalez, Giant Gonzalez. I mean, if you want to go far back, if not, you want to stay kind of in the Attitude Era.
I'm trying to think of what style they'd be. Almost like maybe a Randy Orton type.
Yeah. I guess, Randy might make sense.
And then Triplets of Terror, you got the big boy who is, and something we didn't even mention when we were talking about Triplets of Terror, but I would say the Bray Wyatt type, but this is kind of Bray Wyatt-y, buzzardy kind of feel too.
Or if not Bray Wyatt, Eric Rowan.
Yeah, the beard. So who's winning this thing? I think Museum is out. Goldust is out.
Yeah, Goldust is done. He ain't gonna last very long.
I don't think Slaughter's taking it. I think he's the second out.
Yeah.
Goblins. I think you're going to think Goblins wins, and he doesn't.
Probably not, but I don't think Sweets is either. I think Sweets is...
I don't think so
think really
either.
It would come down to...
Triplets and Monstruos.
Because the monsters, you never know what they're capable of, and...
I would give it to Monstruos if it was that.
I'd give it to Monstruos. Yeah, I would too, because again, if we're thinking of them in the ways, if we're thinking of it as the character itself from the house, I mean, these monsters could be 7 feet fucking tall. I mean, they could be big ass, like scary ass monsters, and
I view them as agile too. I mean, we got 3 big boys essentially that Hell in a Cell. That doesn't really favor them. You need that.
Yeah, I mean, Big Phil's got a sledgehammer, so I mean, he might be able to do some damage, but
I
think Monstruos. I think Monstruos.
Yeah. I like that one. All right, let's get to our next one.
It's a good question, though.
Hey, y'all. This is Quinn. I was excited last year to be able to meet Nick at the bar seconds before Pumpkin guy, whatever his name was, he showed up.
David S. Pumpkin.
It was super cool meeting you guys. I think these originals look pretty solid. I'm a little confused with the Triplets of Terror. It kind of feels like this year's Hellblock Horror is what I was hearing on some of the social medias. But I'm excited. Hoping Goblins isn't as strange as Dueling Dragons, but we'll see. But excited to hear your guys' thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that, Seamus. Other people have been mentioning it. I personally didn't initially get that vibe. I think maybe because it's like, I would say out of all of the ones that are announced, it's the most unknown. So it kind of maybe leads people to...
But I think it's more the fact that it just seems super... I don't know the right term, but paint by the numbers. It doesn't come off as something that it's going to be incredibly unique. I mean, we've said it before. Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
House of 1,000 Corpses. Basically take any grimy, grindhousey slasher type movie or house that you've had in the past, and it's basically going to be this. It's just their own version of it, and I think that's what kind of gives off the Hellblock horror thing, where it just space prison with a bunch of random monsters.
Yeah,
like it just kind of gives off that feeling, and that's I think why a lot of people feel that way. It's definitely why I initially was like, this just doesn't seem like it's going to be anything particularly unique, and it might. I mean, it very well could be, but if it's just going to be if it's just going to be 3, hillbilly slasher killer type characters and a whole bunch of slasher scenes, I mean, we've seen that a million times. So I think that's kind of what people are worried about, and I don't blame them, because if honestly, if it's, for a fact there's going to be a chainsaw in this house, right?
Oh,
We all know there will be chainsaw people in this house. So is it going to feel like just a low rent chainsaw, like Texas Chainsaw? So that's I think where people are worried about it, and I totally understand that worry, because I kind of have the same feelings, but I'm willing to give it a chance. But I don't know if I'm going to go into this year with a lot of high expectations, particularly for that for that one house.
Yeah.
And then Goblins, I mean, like he was saying, like I'm not ready to like go off the wall like I did with Dragons last year. But I can't say that I'm super pumped about it.
Yeah.
Like it could be very good, and I think it might be, but I don't know. I don't know.
I have the same thoughts about Goblins as well, but Triplets of Terror, I think I'm a little bit higher on it than everybody else.
I would think if between the two of them, I'd be more apt to enjoy the Triplets one than I am the Goblins one. But
yeah, maybe it's a hot take, but I think I might have it right now. I'm a little bit more intrigued of it over the Museum as well.
Oh, for sure.
So I
think
don't know.
Museum, at least with the Museum, the description makes it sound a little bit more. Okay, there's something there. I don't really know what they're going for, more so than the Triplets one, which is like, hey, look, we're recreating a bunch of kills. Ooh, okay, cool.
It's our birthday.
That's for me. That's
happy birthday from
that's
all
the
of us
biggest
to you.
thing.
Yeah,
they probably should have had a better blurb written out about it. Like, give us a little bit more than that, or just make it sound a little more mysterious than just, Bubba Ray and the Dudley Boys are gonna
have a birthday party.
Ruin your birthday party.
They're gonna 3D you through the table. All right, let's get to our next one. Yeah.
All right, so pretty awesome week. First of all, thanks for covering it and always giving out some posts on Instagram and Twitter so that we can follow along with the announcements. Great work. Secondly, I have a feeling after this amazing week, tomorrow, Saturday, 10:33 just probably isn't going to hit the same, but we'll see. I'm already working on ranking my list, my hype list of these houses, and excited to see what the 4 IPs are going to bring to that list. Hopefully y'all are already working on yours too. Definitely don't want to hear them yet. We got a long season ahead to ponder and continue ranking these houses. But my question is, do you believe that maybe the reason we might be getting just the 4 IPs this season would be because we are possibly getting the weekend scare zone? Just a thought. So I figured I'd let y'all think about that. And anyway, we love the show, love listening. Get to play it in the car all the time while I'm working. So keep it up, and we'll see you in September.
Oh yeah, man! Thanks for listening, and we're glad we could help you get through the day. I know I wish I could listen to podcasts while I was working, but alas, I can't. Yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe that rumor of the weekend scare zone has been floating around. I think with a year that we've kind of been discussing this episode, where it seems a little, let's just call it borrowed. And again, that would kind of be another borrowed thing, but it would be a very hyped borrowed, much like how Stranger Things was. People, it was consistently one of the highest weights. So the luster of Stranger Things didn't wear off on people yet. It's still obviously a very big name, and the weekend is just that. And I'd be open to that. I'd love to have a weekend zone because it's a very I think depending on what the cost is to acquire that from him, maybe he cuts him a deal. Maybe he's like so into it that it's not as crazy of a cost as others might think. But it's a very low cost scare zone to put together that I think would translate into a very good one, right? I mean, you had the Rob Zombie one. All you need is, make it a cool party scene, get some cool characters, blast the music, and you're off and running. And
I mean, it would be this. Honestly, it would be the simplest scare zone for them to do if you think about it, because it's like, what do? Like you just said, it's you put the scare actors from the house, you pump his music in, put the smoke in there, have the sexy dancers, and it kind of just writes itself. You know what I'm saying? Like there's not a whole lot you got to do. You don't got to build a whole lot of stuff. I mean, put a stage up, put a couple different set pieces in there, like we have with Rob Zombie. Maybe put that convertible he's got in that one music video. I forget what song it's for, but like he's driving. I think it's the da 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 da, and I forget. I'm not a singer, but it's like the you got to touch me. I don't know if I don't.
Is that Blinding Lights when he's driving through the strip?
Be. Yeah. So maybe that's what. Maybe it's Blinding Lights. I know. I just ruined everybody's night with my singing, but yeah, it might be Blinding Lights when he's driving around downtown with in the car.
Yeah,
stick that car in the scare zone if you can get one.
Yeah, the only thing I wouldn't want from the weekend scare zone is I just wouldn't want it in New York. I think that's too much.
No, they have to put that in San Francisco. And to be honest with you, like
even New York could work, or not New York, Hollywood.
Hollywood. Okay, I mean, that would make more sense for him. Like that would be the place to put him. Would be in Hollywood. And I know this isn't exactly what he was asking. Like he was asking, what do we think? That's why we're only getting 4 IPs. But I mean, to answer your question, yes, I think that's a very solid thought or opinion that maybe they just couldn't swing the 5 IPs. We lost one for some reason, whatever it happens to be. But there was, already in the works planning a scare zone for the weekend. I think that would make a ton of sense because, I mean, as long as they weren't forced to destroy everything like they have been in the past, like a lot of times, like they'll build a house, especially for like Netflix and everything they build for it, they have to destroy everything after the event ends. So as long as it wasn't like one of those situations where like he made them destroy everything, maybe he was like, yeah, you guys can just hang on to it for the future and, we can use it for something else maybe down the road or work with each other again. And maybe that's what this is. Maybe they're going to work with each other again and put them in a scare zone. I think it would fit great. I mean, we talked about it a few episodes ago where if you remember the waits for his house and how much of a vibe it was waiting in line, like it was just the music playing, everybody kind of singing along and enjoying themselves. It actually made the wait bearable. Not just like waiting for Last of Us and all you hear is the like the theme song. It's like that makes, I mean, it was a pretty rough wait, but with like his house, at least there was like a reason to kind of wait, the lights and stuff. So if you just took that vibe and put it in a scare zone, that works so much better. I just like it over in San Francisco, especially now with the Peacock bar, because you've got the bar right there.
And that could be the weekend. Have a drink.
They can hang out at the weekend zone for a little bit, enjoy the music, and then obviously move on to something else. But the good thing about those zones, a zone like that will pull people too. So like it'll give people a reason to like stop and hang out in the zone for a while. Not a lot of scare zones give you that. I mean, Graveyard did, in just recent history. Graveyard did. Conjure the Dark did. Vamp 69 last year to an extent. You wanted to kind of stick around a little bit because you wanted to catch every little set piece and look at the monsters and listen to the music. Those work. Like if you have a scare zone with like licensed music, it works really well. Obviously, the whole point of licensing the songs is what makes it difficult. But I mean, just again to go back to his original question, I think that makes sense. I think that could be a very good. It could be a reason why.
I would say if you hold that up to the other proposed IPs, it's probably the top one.
Yeah, I mean, I would think
or
so.
Close to it. That's
and it also gives them billing. Right, and it gives them a whole other excuse to sell a bunch of weekend merch too.
Yep. Yeah. All right, let's move on to this next one.
What's up, Fear and Beer? First time caller here. Huge fan of you guys. Love what you guys do. Now, about these 6 houses that were announced, I never got to do the first Slaughter Sinema, so I'm very excited to see what they do for the second one. I've always watched the first walkthrough on YouTube and everything like that, and I've been a huge fan. And especially being of Mexican descent, anything that has to would do with Latin American stories like that, I'm a huge fan of that. So I'm very excited for those 2 houses. Now the rest, any original house is always going to be great. So I'm just curious what those are going to be, and I'm ready to hear your thoughts. Thank you guys for hearing me out.
Yeah, I mean, that's the cool part about these 6 houses that have been announced so far is they are all drastically different. You have the dirty slasher, you have the Latin American monsters, you have this like museum, could be high scale kind of thing. You have that fun, wacky LSD acid trip of Major Sweets. You have fantasy for Goblin's Feast and Slaughter Cinema. You have that like B grade style thing. And Seamus, you didn't get to do Slaughter Cinema, so you
I did not either. Nope. So I definitely share that with the caller. That's I never get a chance to do it. So I'm excited that they're bringing it back as a sequel. So we'll see. We'll see. I do agree that, yeah, you're right. I think that every single one of these are all very different. There's nothing that's going to be somewhat the same between the two, or like, you know, kind of adjacent to each other. And they do a pretty good job with the originals in anyways. So as long as like none of the IPs are anything too similar, I think we're going to have a really diverse event, which is good. And I like that. And I've said before too, I liked the trend they were on, where they were giving us different ideas that weren't just your standard cliche American horror stuff. Like, I like the idea of giving us different like cultural cryptids and that sort of thing. Like they would do like Yeti, and then they would do Chupacabra, and then like a few other things that, like, you know, show us stuff from other places. Like, I would love to see like a Singapore or a Hong Kong house. I know that they tried to do that with the Zodiac last season, but I don't think that Scare Zone went over very well. So if they are ever to do something like that again, bring that back as a house, maybe. Yeah. But they do. I mean, there are so many like things you can do from different, like just different cultures that we're not used to, that would work really well as some sort of horror house. Like, I mean, there's so many things just in like the Asian culture, whether that's, you know, Asian cultures, I should say, not just one culture, but like, you know, something from like, you know, Japanese folklore or Korean folklore, or Christ, give me something like Filipino folklore, or Vietnamese folklore, something that's like different that I've never seen before.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, again, I've said before, I'm a movie snob, and I love foreign horror films. Like, give me like a lot of the different, you know, Korean and Japanese horror. I love that stuff. Like, if we could find like more things along those lines, like he was saying with the Latin American monsters, I think it's going to be a really cool, interesting thing that I've never seen. I've never really done before. Outside of Chupacabra. Like, I've never heard of these 3 monsters. So I'm interested to learn about, you know, what they represent, like, where do they come from? What are their differences? I like the idea of like the owl. And I think in passing, and you've heard certain things or read certain things, you know, if you're kind of in this world, like you're in this community, you like this stuff, you've heard some things, but it's nice to kind of get a unique flavor or a unique taste to the event, rather than just the same old.
Yeah, I'm excited. The variety is what makes this event what it is, right? It's not
correct.
It's and you look back at some of the past years, you know, they had the year where they had like Freddy, Jason, Leatherface, they all had their own house, and it's like, that's good and great. And as much as I love all those, do you really want to take up 33% or almost 40% of your event?
Yeah, and it's almost like eating too much sugar. Like, if you hit us with too many like heavy hitters like that, like, it's almost like it's too much.
Mm-hmm.
It's too much overload there. Like, I need something different. Don't give me 3 slashers, because it's, at the end of the day, it's gonna be the same thing, just in a different world or with a different theme. You know, so give me the 1 slasher house, but then give me something different, completely unique and different than that. So I don't know if I want an event where we have, you know, 5 IPs and all of the IPs are massive, huge hitters. Like, I need something that's like somewhat underground, somewhat different. Like, shit, give me a Crow House at some point.
Yeah.
Like I'd love to see something like along those lines.
Something weird. Yep.
Yeah, something different. I mean, shit. Give me a Sweeney Todd house. I don't know if they've ever done that before in the past. Like I don't know. Like maybe they have, and I'm sure someone will correct me if they did.
I don't
but like
that's
something along those lines. Give me a horror musical house.
Yeah,
like,
just something
seriously.
bizarre. Just
something different, bizarre. Yeah.
All right, let's get into this other one.
Hey, Fear and Beer. This is Bear from South Florida. Just want to say I'm drinking a single in Havana from Barrel Amongst Brewery. It's a blonde ale with guava hint, great summer beer. Really enjoyed the podcast. Congrats on 4 years. After all the announcements this past 7 days, finally caught my breath long enough to give you a call. I am pro Original House, and this lineup seems solid. My first year was 2018. Slaughter Sinema was one of my first houses. Really glad to see a sequel. I also like those traditional Halloween vibes, and I think Major Sweets and Goblins will deliver on that. Also cool to get Monstruos because of all the hype from California. And the one I'm most excited about is Museum. I think if it's done right, it could be incredible. Picture characters from a diorama coming out and attacking you. That seems so cool. Triplets seems out of left field to me, but it's got me curious. So really looking forward to this year. Thanks for taking my call and keep up the great work. Cheers.
Thanks, man. Enjoy that. That sounds like a good summer beer.
Those sounds like a solid beer. I'm not gonna lie.
Those fruit-oriented ones are always the good ones. Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even really think of Goblin's Feast being that like Halloween quintessential style house, but it very well could have a lot of those.
Yeah,
that style. Museum. I think you're right. Like I think it, like you said, it could be a really well done house. Now the flip side of that is it could just fall. Like it's so either or for me.
Yeah.
And I've kind of made myself not say the word diorama so far when talking about the museum because I knew I would inevitably just say diarrhea. But that's another point. Yeah, I mean, much like the last caller, these are all such varied things. And Slaughter Sinema, what a way to like kick off the announcements, right? With announcing like such a beloved house getting a sequel, and it's just such a fun sequel that I'm really excited for you to go through this because it's just the original was so much fun.
I believe it. I mean, we got a taste of it when we did the Icons house, and you went through the Usher, through the movie theater. So I feel like you're gonna get that type of thing with this. I mean, because the first one was a drive-in, wasn't it? Or
yeah,
was it?
And we're still at the Cary drive-in, so they're both
we are
Cary
still
drive-in.
at a drive-in. Okay, but either way, I mean, it's going to give us that. And the thing is like, there aren't too many real drive-ins left in, at least in the States. I don't know if there's anything like that over in Europe or anything like that, but like there's one in Lakeland here. I've been dying to go to it, and I haven't ever found a night to do it, but it would have to like we go down and I stay at my parents' house or something like that. But, yeah, it would be a blast to really experience that for the first time. And yeah, I mean, I don't want to harp on it, but Goblins could be that, surprise hit that gives you a lot of different things, whether that's, horror Lord of the Rings or, they did say witches in the description. So yeah, I mean, you could get some of that traditional feeling from that, but yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I keep saying the same thing. I think that the uniqueness of the different originals this year is definitely something that gives me hope that this year is going to be solid, even if they are kind of like strung out a little bit resources wise.
Yeah,
when it comes to building these things.
All right, let's get into our last couple. A couple more here, and then we'll be signing off for the night.
A lot of calling.
Yeah, we got a lot.
Hey, Fear and Beer gang, it's Todd up in Canada. Just wanted to congratulate you on 4-year anniversary. That's fantastic. And with all these original bangers coming out this year, it's looking like a great HHN shaping up for us. See everybody in the fog.
Oh yeah!
What the fuck, Canada?
all the way from Canada, baby!
Holy shit!
I think that was Todd. I could be wrong, but I believe it was Todd.
Did you say Todd? Yeah.
I'm
play it again.
Bad with hearing. Yeah, let's do it.
It was short.
We'll try
play it one more time. I'm still blown away that he said I'm from Canada. Like, what the fuck?
Hey, Fear and Beer gang, it's Todd up in Canada.
Yeah, it is Todd. Okay.
Todd. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, if it's who I think it is, if it's Todd Meek, then I met up with him and his son at
Oh, right.
at our
Okay.
nights. They've been listening forever. It's
That's
it's
awesome.
crazy.
That's so sick. It's
yeah,
so weird. Like I just thought like people in Florida listened to us. Like we had like a bunch of people in Orlando. It was like, oh, we'll just listen to these local guys, and then we get people from New York coming to
trivia.
Shout out to New York. I'm sorry, I forget your name already, but we spoke a little bit on trivia night, and then obviously Todd from Canada. Like so, the fact that you listen to us and you don't like. I don't know. I don't know. It's just weird. It's weird that people listen to this podcast.
It's a good weird. I love it.
No, it's a good weird. It's good weird. I'm not used to being that person. I'm used to being the unknown person that kind of sits in the back of the class and doesn't talk to anybody. So my social anxieties is like, holy crap, that's weird. But that's great. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm really excited for this year and excited to experience these houses with you guys. So.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's looking like a really good lineup. The only thing I wish, I have said it before, I like knowing stuff, but I don't want to know all this too soon. And now we gotta.
Yeah, I mean, I hope we get give us a few days before you start announcing other things. Like give us a week or two.
I mean, IPs, give me one in the late June, give me 2 in July, give me 1 early August, and then drop the scare zones at the end.
I mean, I think we've said it before. It's surprising a little bit that we haven't received any word on any IP yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Considering it's May or at the end of May, you would think that by now we would have at least had one IP announced, or at least the big IP announced. But the fact that we haven't had anything yet,
interesting.
I mean, I know that Jamie's worried about it. I think maybe I'm less worried and more just, I think they're hammering out legal details before they can start saying things. But
and I think it comes down to advertising time. I think they have so much planned with the parade, the water show, DreamWorks Land, Epic Universe. I think they had designated slots and times, and they're like, okay, well, we don't have that time in the end of August for your original dump. You're going to have to do that earlier. IPs will just push back a little bit and, whatever.
And I'm wondering too, I think you may have mentioned it. Does this have something to do with the behind the scenes tours?
Oh, the unmaskings. I mean, it could.
Unmasking tours because they're doing those early too.
They could come out and say, hey, unmasking house, 3 houses, suites, goblins, and museum or something like that, and just to pump sales for that. But all right, let's get into this one.
Hi, my name is Danielle. I'm calling from Orlando, Florida. So my thoughts on announcing 6 original concept houses is that I think they're putting a lot of money into their original concept this year and reserving funds for paying for specific IP and things like that, which I'm really excited for. I think there's going to be a lot of more effort and creativity put into these original concepts. If we're getting less IP than usual, that means that, they're reassessing their funds probably and trying to determine if it's really worth paying tens, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars for these IPs when they could take all that money and just create a really awesome house, which all of us HHN fans, especially here in Orlando, love. When they do it well, it kicks ass. All right, thanks, y'all.
Thanks for calling in, Danielle. Yeah, I think you're spot on. Yeah, I think you're spot on.
100%.
Take some of that money that you could have put towards securing the rights for an IP. At this point, I mean, you're gonna sell the tickets you sell. I don't think there's many properties out there that really move the needle to such an extent that it's worth shelling out that money when you could just dump it into one of your own properties and do whatever the hell you want, announce it whenever you want, and have absolute free reign. I think you're kind of spot on that.
Yeah, I wonder if it's something we have to maybe, I don't want to say like get used to, but don't be surprised if we see this more often.
Mm-hmm.
Cutting down on the number of IPs. I know that for some people that's not a good thing. And for some people it is, but I wouldn't be surprised if going forward we have 6 originals and 4 IPs, and maybe one day changing that. Like we've talked about it before in the past, they're definitely going to have to increase the number of houses, at least by 1 in the near future, because I think that the event's getting big or too big to the point where maybe even 10 houses isn't enough to spread enough people around, especially for those that are coming in for 1 or 2 days. They want to get everything done if you have another Last of Us where the line is out all the way beyond the entrance, that's not going to work. It's not sustainable if you have one house that has an hour wait just to get to the next timer. Like just as a story, just Seamus' story time. So last year we waited for Last of Us the first year, or the first the opening weekend or whatever it was, and it was like 80 minutes from the start of the line to where the queue kind of like started to go back and forth down by the house itself, and you have that second clock, and that clock was like an hour and 20. So it's like, I remember like we were in line for probably an hour-ish, maybe a little over an hour, and I finally said, I can't wait another 45 minutes to an hour because I'm falling asleep. I need to get out of here, and we'll come back and do it tomorrow. So we left, and if we were walking out, people were like, everyone was asking what was going on. I'm like, we just can't wait any longer. I'm like, I don't know how long you've waited so far, but when you get down to the next timer, it's going to be another hour before you get into the house. Yeah. And people are like, oh my God, what? I'm like, yeah, this house is incredible when it comes to its wait time. So I worry that if you've only got one solid IP and the other three are like, they are what they are, that you're going to run into the same issue where you're going to have just that one house with, an hour and a half, 2 hour wait, and everything else is 45 minutes. And unfortunately, you can't control that necessarily, but I do worry that if they do focus too much on getting one massive pull, that's going to happen. So maybe if they cut the number of IPs and there's more originals, I don't know if that helps that, and probably doesn't help it at all. Yeah. So really just kind of hoping that this year's an aberration, that this year is, hey, we have to kind of reserve funds, reserve resources because we have another park opening. Don't worry, next year and the year after, we're going to go back to what we were before. 5 and 5, if we can make it work. And we'll have a lot of like more original ideas.
Yeah, I think so too. I think we're not far out. I want to say 35 is probably when we get the 11th house, but maybe 34 because of that increase of now you don't have people coming down for 2 parks. You have people coming down for 3 parks. And not only is it a third park, but it's your biggest park. It's the biggest park in Orlando.
Right.
So like you're going to get those people that maybe they don't come to Horror Nights, but they're down here for Epic during that time. And now they come. That's going to be a huge influx in people. So 34's attendance is going to be ridiculous just based on
who knows how they're going to incorporate the monsters part of that park too.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be another thing people aren't really considering, is that monsters are all going to be are going to be in Epic. How do we incorporate that in any way?
Yeah. So
if we incorporate it,
let's get into our last one. It's a little bit of a longer one, but it's our last one, and we're going to push through and we're going to get through this, but it's like a 3-parter, but I think it cut off. So the last 2 are just smaller.
Give him his airtime.
Yeah. Well, it's our last one and we're going to run it. So fuck it. Here we go.
Hey guys. First, I would like to say thank you for holding the trivia event. I had a blast there, even though my team didn't even do that solid compared to everyone else. Also, I wanted to say thank you for taking a picture with me and my friend Michael, along with Matt, Hunter, Liz, and Ash. It was a really cool moment, and I'll remember that for a long-ass time. As far as the originals, I have Slaughter Sinema, too, as my most hyped original so far. It's really pulling on the nostalgia heartstrings for me, and I'm very interested to see what other movies will be presented in this house. I really hope this stays in the sprung tent so we can have that same facade that we did back in 2018. And my second most hyped house, there I am. Okay. My second most hyped house is Major Suites. That scare zone, insanely good. Top 3 scare zone of all time for me. I also have a really spooky ass memory of going through that scare zone and then entering the Halloween house and hearing Mr. Sandman. Just money. Well, entering where am I? There I am. Okay, yeah, sorry. I'm reading off this note thing. The sick and twisted version of Wonka's Factory. If it's anything like that, I could see myself having a blast in it. My third most hyped house is Triplets of Terror. As far as I know, this was the unknown original. It's giving really strong Rob Zombie, House 1000 Corpses, Freak from Hell type of vibes. And this is supposed to be the gore house as well. And the fact that it takes place during a birthday party, there's just so much going on for that house that I just can't put it any lower than 3. And the more I think about it, the more I just get excited about it. Yeah, Bray Bray Wyatt, Rob Zombie type of family scares the hell out of me. So I'm going to leave it there. Number 4, I got the museum, Deadly Exhibit. I love history, and the idea of it seems pretty cool. Getting some strong graveyard games of puppet theater type of vibes from it. I really hope there's a lot of creatures and clever scares. Maybe going through a painting and the environments depicted as well. Stuff like that, you know. Number 5, I got the Latin American monsters. I've seen the walkthrough before in Hollywood. It's an interesting idea. I hope there's a lot of dialogue for characters, and I hope this sets are rammed. Just go all out with it. Lastly, I got Goblin. I wasn't a big fan of Dueling Dragons last year, so my fantasy, like the vibe from it, not really there for me. Like even going through Dragons last year for the first time, I didn't even see the dragons, and then the second time I went through it, I mistook them for statues. But enough of that dragon slander. Seamus, you made that point clear numerous amount of times. You guys said in your last episode about them taking this house seriously or making it stupid funny, and I can only see it being silly. I forgot who said it, but one of you guys said they tried to take it too seriously, it's going to fail. And that is 100% on the money with that. I agree 100% with you guys on that. This can work, and I can picture the facade being a tavern kind of like Darkest Steel was, and I really do hope that house is very silly. And if they do it like that, but I was done with that. I was done with my little yapping session right there. Just wanted to thank you guys for all the content. Keep up the amazing work, and thanks for making the best memory I could have asked for at the trivia night. Really appreciate taking that picture. It meant a lot for me. Been listening to you guys for a really long time, and still surreal. Thank you guys so much. Keep it up. I forgot one thing, and it was about a scare zone. What do you guys think about the weekend having a scare zone? Because I've seen that rumor float, like, even for Hollywood. Since they're supposed to be getting a house. Do you guys see that being a scare zone? Or like, I want to hear your thoughts on that. Also, it's Donovan. Thanks again, you guys. Keep it up.
Oh yeah, Donovan. Well, if you didn't butter me up with so many compliments, I wouldn't have let the whole thing run. But you really tugged at the heartstrings there. Yeah, dude. I mean, as much as you say that we made your day by like taking a picture, like you made our day just as much by being there and like wanting to take our picture with us. That was super cool. Like it's that role reversal thing where like you all listening, if you ever, run up or see us in the park or you want to say hi and you talk to us and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm so happy to talk to you guys. Like, this is ridiculous. Blah, 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 blah. I'm like, dude, this is like more ridiculous for me. Like I'm getting just as much, if not more enjoyment from somebody coming up and being like, dude, thank you. Like, I actually listened to you. This is meaningful to me. So like, thank you, Donovan, for showing up, even wanting to take a picture and, listening along for so long. So that on itself is really cool, dude. Your hype list is pretty spot on. I haven't really listed mine up yet, but everything you said is kind of on par with what we were talking about earlier. And we kind of hit upon the weekend zone already. So I'm sure you already heard us talk about that. So we don't really need to get into it too much right now again, but any more thoughts on all that, Seamus?
What you said, yeah. I don't want to repeat everything you said, but you're right. I mean, yeah, I think that, I think we're just as excited to have people want to take pictures with us or want to say hi or want to just, bullshit about, the event or horror or whatever. I think that's pretty cool because I don't consider myself a famous person. Like I'm not famous. I just like talking about this shit on online and sharing it with other people. Cause if I'm going to talk about this stuff anyways, I might as well put it on the internet so everyone else can tell me why I'm wrong. So, yeah, I agree. I think agree with everything you said about your houses. I haven't really kind of thought about what I'm hyped for yet. I think it's still a little too early for me to really hammer that out, but come the fall, I'm sure I'll have, or the end of summer, I'm sure I'll have a better idea of where I think everything's going to land for me. And yeah, I think it was either you or me that did say something about how like Goblins is only going to work if it's funny. Yeah. And funny in the sense that like they don't take themselves too serious. If they try to take it too serious, it's just not going to work because it's goofy. If they're like super serious Goblins, like it has to be like,
I mean, look at Goblins. Bugs. Bugs was not. They didn't take itself serious.
Right. It has to be campy. Like some things just work better as a campy movie or story or whatever. rather than saying, hey, take this real serious because this is a real serious thing, real serious story, and it's not going to work if it doesn't. If they do that with that, but
not at all.
I don't know. Other than that, I mean, super excited, super pumped for this year. I think that I was worried a little bit, but now that we have
more than we thought,
more than we thought we were going to have by the end of May, I think that we have a lot to look forward to, and obviously we're in good hands. Universal never disappoint. I mean, rarely do they disappoint. So even they made Dragons bearable.
Well, our last run with Catacombs and 365 made that
it was a fun
bearable.
night. That last couple of nights last year definitely were fun. So,
but all right, well, we will be back next week. We'll get Jamie on board. We'll talk about all 6 together again, and we'll kind of get we'll dish it out a little bit more unless anything.
Yeah, we'll get Jamie's thoughts on the houses because she didn't get a chance to really tell us what she felt. So.
No, so we'll get into that next week.
I mean, she's told us behind the scenes. Like I'm interested to see what she says on camera, but
that's a whole different story. But all right, well, until next time, this is Nick.
And this is Seamus.
Happy haunts.
It's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare,
And again, I would just like to thank Vampire Stepdad for letting us use his music for our intro and outro music. So if you would, just go check him out. Spotify, Facebook. Again, that is Vampire Stepdad.